All right, so this is the Religious Emblems Mapping Program. This was originally designed to be one of the Spark sessions at the National Annual Meeting. And what a Spark session is they're the little breakout classrooms that we do throughout that week, teaching all the volunteers and the professionals that are there different classes. So our two presenters today, Jim Marchbank. Jim chairs the Religious Subcommittee of the National Religious Relationships Committee, the Relations Subcommittee. He is also chairs the Religious Relationship Committee for the Greater St. Louis Area Council, and he's an entrepreneur who has taught MBAs in Europe, Beijing, and Bangkok. And then Ben Brennicke is joining him, and Ben is the field director for the Greater St. Louis Area Council. He is an Eagle Scout and a den leader for PAC 972 in St. Charles County, Missouri. And Ben has two sons in the Scouts BSA and Cub Scouting programs. And he is the staff advisor for the Council Religious Relationships Committee and has been on staff for the Boy Scouts of America since 2004. Jim, all yours.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. And this says the same thing. I think most of you have been in enough Zoom sessions to know that you can use you can raise your hand or preferably use the chat feature, and then we will address your question. It would be helpful if you're not already muted, if you would mute yourself. That will prevent the background noise and dogs barking. Every Scout's got an opportunity to earn religious emblems, and this is the third session today. Well, this second session on religious emblems, and the first one I joined was talking about the Religious Relationships Committee, which in these two are kind of work together. These emblems fulfill a duty to God adventure requirement, and they're really, really important. I think that they are a very important retention tool for Scouts, and having this program encourages faiths to participate and reinforce the Scouts to encourage them to grow in their own faith. And finally, this gives an opportunity for new units, since the faith chartered orgs are overwhelming percentage of the opportunities for new units in Scouts. It's a great quote from Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence. He said, if it's not broke, don't fix it anyway, because the original quote is, don't mess with it. But I think it's important that we take a look at everything, be continuously improving things. And the emblem program is certainly not broken, but we felt like in St. Louis that we could make it a little bit better. If you think about it, there's kind of an invisible wall between a Scout and the faith organization that's presenting the opportunity for them to earn their emblem. They might not know the closest place to earn their nearest emblem, so in St. Louis we developed a tool which makes it a little easier for Scouts to find their nearest location. If you think about most Scout units, for example, if you have a Scout unit that's chartered by a Baptist church, in that unit there's a strong possibility that there are Methodists, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Church of Christ. It could be any number of religious faiths that are part of that unit. And if one of those non-Baptist Scouts come up to the leader and say, I've read about these religious emblems, where could I go to earn my religious emblem? There's about a 95% chance that Scout leader will say, gosh, I don't know. Maybe you need to check with your faith. Depending upon how sophisticated the faith unit is that he goes to, they may or may not be familiar with the religious emblem program. So this was designed to break down that invisible wall, to allow a Scout, a leader, a parent, a volunteer to immediately find a faith location nearby that participates in the program. The beautiful thing about it, it can be used from any computer or any smartphone. iPhones need to have Google Drive installed, but that's a no-brainer. It's free, and many schools automatically use Google Drive. So we developed that. Ben Brennecke, who's going to do most of this presentation, did the heavy lifting, and he's our resident expert in this regard. And I would also give a shout out to a member of our Catholic committee who originally came up with the concept as to which program we could use to do this, and that was Joe Jabrinsky. So I won't ask you to do this now, but I'm going to show you how to do it, and then later it's easy. If you go to our website for our council, which is shown down below, and it's easy if you wanted to make a note of that website, it's just stlbsa.org. So if you go to that site, which I'm doing now, you can see this is our council website. If you go up to the top under activities, there are two ways you can get to this page. One way is to go under activities to duty to God. There's a second way to go under religious emblems under awards. Either place gets you to the same location. So this is the Duty to God page. We've got information here about events and so forth, but you can see, I hope, that we've got all our different faiths located alphabetically. So we start with the AME, Assembly of God, Baha'i, et cetera, and we end with United Methodist. Alphabetical order, so it makes it real easy for a scout, his parents or whatever, to get to this site and find their location. So if I happen to be Baptist, which I am used to be, but not now, and click on the Baptist, it brings up this map. This map shows two things. First of all, in purple, it shows all the Baptist locations of churches that offer this religious training. Secondly, it shows the other Protestant locations that would allow a Baptist scout to earn their emblem in case these others are not too close to him or her. And I will open that map up a little bit, make it a little bigger. So if I happen to be a scout and I live in this particular area, and if I click on this, you can see I brought up the Central Baptist Church, the address, the zip, the phone number, church website, if there is one, and where they might be able to get the materials. Now, when we were developing this, we thought about, let's list the leader that does the actual training. Let's show that we do this on every other month, or on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, or in November every year. And here's my cell phone number. And we decided not to do that. We decided not to do that on purpose because that information changes quickly, and it would be a real chore to keep that information updated. So we decided to put minimal information, and then we feel like if the scout calls or somebody calls that church office and says, I'm interested in the religious emblem program, they can connect them to whoever's responsible for that religious emblem program. So I just did that one congregation. I can just bring up the Baptist, or I can bring up just the other location. So I can quickly link on that. I can bring up another one, but let me just go back and do this. So that's how easy it is to do this. Now, we put here some major links for faith organizations in the St. Louis Council. But if you, again, these are all on the map, and I could have gone to those individually. But if I click on Methodist, the same map, the purple are the Methodist, and the Red are the Protestant organizations that would support a Methodist Scout in earning their religious emblem. If I click on the Jewish, there are half a dozen, 5 places in the Greater St. Louis Council that offer this training. There are no backup locations, but those are the Jewish locations. And again, I can show you these others, but the concept is exactly the same. There's a link for each one of these. The steps to earn a religious emblems. Some of this is repetitive, but that's the way we learn. Jason Nolan gave a great presentation in the last hour about how to do this, but you need to get the books. Then there's going to be some parental involvement depending upon the faith. The religious leaders are very important, and families should talk to them. Find a location. That's where we're trying to make it easier, and then to complete the requirements. Now I am going to turn this over to Ben right now, but Henry Ford was a great industrialist, and I'm sure some of you are thinking right now, gosh, that kind of looked complicated. I'm not sure we can do that. I really don't have a degree in mathematics or computer science, and so, gosh, that looked technical. Henry said it best. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And we're here to convince you that you can, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ben and let him kind of walk you through how you do this. This website's going to be posted up. It's designed to be a learning tool for you to use if your council has an interest in doing this after we finish this presentation. Ben, take it away.
All right, thanks, Jim. Appreciate your help. It's good to see everybody and their commitment to scouting, and certainly we appreciate Jim's leadership leading this as well. So we use Google. It's pretty incredible the tools that Google has, and I don't really consider myself that techie or technical, but I did follow a few steps through just some of the online forums for putting these together. There's certain businesses that use this tool to create awareness of their business. So we kind of just piggybacked on some of the forums that are out there on how to do this. But if I can figure it out, it's pretty simple for everybody else too. So let me share my screen here. Oh, so Jim, maybe there you go. All right, so let's see here. Sorry, Jim, we're rolling through.
You're going awfully fast, Ben.
It looked like it started with your slides, so here we go. Hopefully,
it did. You're fine.
Let's see this. All right, so there's a few ways to gather the data. So we gathered the data through the PRE organization for chartering or for institutions that have adopted this program. Another way, if you have a relationship with your council, you can certainly get this data from your council. But it's more or less a chartering organization listing that you can get through your registrar. We waited until the end of the year to gather this data so that we could have a point to get all the information. Sometimes there's new units that are organized, or sometimes there's a unit that becomes defective and it takes months to get that cleared. But you will need to use you will need to get the data in Excel, and this is something that the registrar can help you with. The ultimate goal is to save your information in a CSV file. So once you gather all your data, you can go through that process through Excel to save it as CSV. That's the best method for Google to recognize it. So once you put together your data, these are the things that we wanted to show up on each individual Google pin. So obviously the congregation, the address of the congregation, the state, city, and zip. We thought it'd be a good idea to put the congregation's website and then where to go for those resources. If a scout wants to earn their religious emblems, they'll have to go to that the PrayPub website to download that data. But you can put as many, I think from what I can see, it's pretty unlimited with the amount of data that will show up on the pin, but we wanted to make it basic. So we wanted to focus on, the main things. So where to go to get the information in the Google pin. So you will need a Google account to start this process. Hopefully, if you don't, you can put one together. It's fairly simple to do that. So once you have a Google account, you will go to the Google Maps website and then click sign in. Once you sign in, I guess in the IT world, they call this the hamburger, the 3 little lines. So you'll click on the menu button here once you log in, and then you'll go all the way down to your places. A couple more steps here. Clicking on the maps would be next. And then at the very bottom of that, you will create a map. So our intent is to create an individual map for all the different faiths that are participating in the Religious Emblems program. So you'll create, so each one of these faiths will, you'll be able to create a specific map for. So once you log in and create a map, it will be untitled. So you can click on that untitled map button. I guess you could hover over it, not necessarily click on it, but then you would be able to edit the map title and then have a short description for that individual map that you've just created. For instance, if you were creating a Lutheran mapping pin title, you just change that to Lutheran. There's just another step there to, right now it's untitled, but if you were to hover over that, that layer and click import, this is where the next step will show you how to import all the data for your individual pin. So once you save your CSV file, there's a couple different places you can save it. Ideally, saving it to your computer is most ideal. You can also save it through Google Drive, which is another Google feature. So you'll just click the blue button here to select the file that you've saved in CSV. For my particular case, it was saved on my desktop. So you would then select the file and then click open. So the next step would be to check the boxes which you'd like shown on the map pin. So we focused on the basics, and there's many different, if you look at the bar on the box, there's many different items that you can put that will show on each individual pin. So you will select all the different boxes that you'd like shown on each individual mapping pin. So once you go into Google and you were to select that Lutheran pin and you wanted it to show Lutheran for the title, you would select the congregation, whatever column that you labeled your congregation, that's the one that you would select. So ideally you would have each congregation in a column, and that's the way to make sure that the title is showing for each individual pin. All right, here's just an example on how to change the pin. A lot of times with Google, sometimes you'll have to click, and then other times if you just hover, it will then show you how to do that. But if you click the layer name to change the title, you can certainly do that. Next, you would type in the pin that we talked about a little bit earlier, and then you'd hit save. You can never hit save enough, right? So the next step, let's say, for instance, when Jim referred to the Methodist pins earlier, if you'd like to change those pins a specific color, his congregation was purple. So if you were to go into the pin and click all items, and you hover over all items, you can select a different color here for all those pins. You can also go in, and if you want to change the icon, you can do that as well. Down here where it shows more icons. And if you wanted to upload a specific icon, you can do that as well. If you felt like you wanted a church steeple, you could do that if you want to. So that it was all uniform. So for instance, Jim referred to the Methodists being all purple and then the other Protestant congregations in red. It's just an easy way, just something unique about Google. The next step is to add those Lutheran or those other Protestant congregations. Jim referred earlier to a scout that may not have, for instance, if we have a Baptist scout, and there's not a Baptist church near his or her home, they can select a possible other place, another congregation nearby that happens to be Protestant. So this is another way to add another layer to the Lutheran pin. So you just click that add layer button and then import all that data. So you would need another database set up for those other congregations. Again, we're going to click the choose your file to import. So our second layer, we labeled that Protestant Final 2, and then click open. Again, you would check the boxes that you want to display on the pin and then continue. Next step is you'd want to click the title of the pins that you'd like to display. So for that second layer, we labeled that Other Protestant Congregations. And then here's the way to change that title. So the file name will show up. But you can change that. So that's the next step here is to click on that that file where the arrow is showing to change the title. So you then change the layer name and then click save. Now this next step will allow you to share the pins. So right now, if we look, we see that Lutheran has a pin, and then the other Protestant congregations have a pin as well. So, and to allow you to share this, you can copy the link and use it on a website. You can email it out to everybody. You can make this a publicly viewable link for anybody to see just through Google, which is a pretty neat feature. So the next step would be to share. Click the share button where the arrow is showing. So right now, I think the standard is that private, only you can access, since you would be the owner of the map. It looks like the default, I guess, would be that it's private. But if you were to click that change button, you can click the public on the web. So anybody with that link would be able to view those pins, which is something that we would want, obviously, to let everybody know about the opportunities for Scouts to earn their religious emblem. And then you'd click save. So once you click save, the link is, the top arrow shows the link, and you would just highlight that. And then you can copy that link, and then if you hit done, you can then send that out. You can put it on, you can do a hyperlink on your website for all those Lutheran congregations. So if you went to your map to show, you'll just go to that hamburger, again, that I referred to earlier. Click on your hamburger, go to your places, and then maps. And then each map that you create, each pin that you create will show up under your maps, under your places in your Google account, in your Google Map account. So this is the example of the Lutheran congregations that are participating in the Religious Emblems program. And then this next slide shows, so all the items in purple show the Lutheran congregations, and then all the pins that are blue will show those other Protestant congregations. So this is what the pin would look like. Jim shared it earlier, but all the information that we put on each one of those pins is now showing. If you were to hover over one of those pins, this is all the information, and the website and the resources are clickable, so that your scouts can get more information about maybe the church hours, or the next opportunity for them to earn their religious emblem. Or it also shows the resource page for the Pray publications. I know we ran through that pretty quickly.
We seem to have some questions on how we got the list of information gathered into that Excel file from different faith groups.
Okay. Yeah, so the Pray organization keeps a list of all the congregations that a scout earns their religious emblems from. So they were able to give us that information. Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We started with that, and as I remember correctly, we went back the last 3 years, and we debated about sending all of these locations an email and to ask them if they would want to participate in this program. And we felt like that we didn't want to do that. We really would prefer for them to opt out. But we sent an email to all of these identified locations that Pray showed had been participating, and then allowed them to opt out if they wish to do that. For the non-Pray organizations, we went directly to our contact on the Religious Relationships Committee and asked them to give us this information. For example, we wanted to, somebody asked about listing Hindus, and certainly we would love to do that if we had a Hindu faith unit in our organization, in our council. We did have one, we were trying to get a Buddhist organization listed. So I called the national contact on the National Religious Relationships Committee and said, do you have a Buddhist contact in our council that would do this? And he gave me the information. And so part of this is going just one by one to the different faiths and getting the information. The key thing here is, apart from Pray, is the involvement of the Catholics, because the Catholics and the Methodists are very heavy with religious emblems, and they, you need to make sure that you have that. You need to make sure you have that information readily available. We also sent a letter, an email, to all of the other chartered orgs that did not offer this program, and asked them if they would like to participate in our program. And let me see, I want to go to some of this other chat because I think this is really, really important. Daniel makes a good comment that says is it realistic for the church office to have this information about the Scout program? And that's a good question. But there, when you consider alternatives, if the Scout, if that's the nearest location and the Scout calls that church office, it's kind of a guess as to whether the secretary would be familiar with who might would do this. But we would hope that that church secretary would put them in contact with the Scout leader at that location, and they would be able to provide them with that information. Let me see what else, because we had some great questions. The data came, where the data came from. We did reach out, and I explained that. And
Jim, there is one from Rick.
Go.
Did you have to build a separate file for each faith? Yes. It took a long time to do that just because of the geography that we have and the congregations that we have participating. So yes, we had to separate, Baptist, Catholic. That's the only way that Google would allow us to do that from what we could see. So yes, every single faith would have to have a separate file to upload.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And also, we don't want to give anybody the impression this is something you do in an afternoon. This takes a lot of work, but we felt it was worth the investment in time. And that's the reason that we provided kind of the step-by-step instructions to help lead you through the process. The main thing is to start with the data. If you don't have the data, there's no use in trying to replicate what we have done.
The other thing about them being separate files, it does help that if the Catholics have this year's update ready, we can just replace that one file versus trying to find everybody's lines in the same Excel file. So.
Well, in my council, the ACCS prefers not to list the individual congregations. They would prefer to have a link to the ACCS website, and the ACCS then will put them in, will walk them through the process, especially for Pope Pius and Adultary Day. They have an approved counselor list, and the members of that counselor list will not allow their information to be public, so you have to go through the ACCS to get them. And so we're probably likely in the Twin Cities area to have one Catholic church listed, or perhaps two, one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul, linking to the ACCS website where you go get the information.
That's a good comment, because different faiths in different areas are going to handle this different ways. For example, we don't have an Islamic mosque in our council yet, but I contacted the national representative. We showed the location of our council office, but then if you look at the Islamic link on our website, it shows a national contact where you can download the information and who you could contact to earn the emblem. So this is completely customizable by faith, and you can list whatever the faith is comfortable with doing. Who be contact for Catholic parishes? We had a staff member with the diocese that's handles this, and he was the one that actually got the information for us. Yeah, how big is the Greater St. Louis Council in terms of numbers of scouts, or geographic size, or units, or?
A little bit of both, if you would, Jim, because
Yeah.
I don't think too many people realize what you're working with some days.
Yeah, Ben, why don't you, you get the big bucks, why don't you answer that question?
Okay. So if you were looking at traditional membership, in St. Louis, it's the largest council in the nation. There's about 1,000 traditional units serving about 40,000 scouts, which represents about 60 counties in Missouri and Illinois.
Good question. Other comments or questions? And you can just unmute if you like and ask, since we're
Ben,
running. Yeah,
would
go ahead.
you object to having us call you if we get stuck?
No, I'm happy to help. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why
Hey,
we
Ben.
included Ben's contact information on the PowerPoint.
Jim, this is Susan Barabal. I'm in Northwest Indiana, LaSalle Council.
Good.
And we have many dioceses and many, all sorts of things all over the place. And we cross lines because we have very areas that are very bare of anything, and then large communities. But I wanted to share with everyone something I found out. I've been doing 1979. I started doing lists of religions that the kids needed in our pack, and our pack was huge. I did that by hand. In 79, we didn't have the computers. So now all you have to do is, if you want to know who can give you the answers right in your area or right in your town sometimes, you can just go to a search engine, type in Roman Catholic MBSA, Jewish Committee on Scouting, and boom. And what it shows you is the chairs and the committees for all the national teams. They can give you the numbers you want. They can tell you which ones are active. That's an easy way if you can't do all the technology. My patch from 1979 was gold because I was a trained den mother. I mean, so sometimes I'm not always jumping into this, but I know I can go to a website or to the search engine and type in whatever religion and Boy Scouts of America, and the national committees all pop up. Chairs and chaplains will be happy to talk to you.
I'm so thankful that God invented Google, because it is wonderful. We tried to make it a little more sophisticated, not to do this, but for the average scout or parent or volunteer to do this, because we want to encourage our youth to earn as many of these emblems as possible. And if this would avoid them having to make several phone calls to refer them to different people. And but that's a great comment if you're not going to do something like this.
All right, any
Thank
other
you, Liz.
questions?
That's nice comment.
All right, hearing and seeing no hands. If you're needing to reach out to Ben and Jim at any point, feel free to do so. I have dropped the Google Drive link into the chat at one point during today. We'll continue to get these presentations up onto YouTube, our website, Facebook as quickly as we can. And let's keep on building resources around the country.
Amanda, should we email this PowerPoint to you, or
Yes,
try to add it to?
If you'll email it to me, I had to switch off some settings, so yes.
Okay, that's great. Tiffany, and I hope you do that. And